Have joining me in the studio some members of the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum. Professor Charles Nwekeaku here is the secretary of the Igbo Elders Consultative Forum, which is a key component of that SMBLF. And of course, joining us live from Kaduna is the former president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, Sokapu Jonathan Asake. He's also the Labour Party governorship candidate in Kaduna State. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. And let's start with you, Asake. What does this endorsement mean, considering how we've usually had politics in this country? We are seeing both Southern and Middle Belt forces joining hands to this time around want to push a candidate. And the first question is why this candidate of the PDP who was supported by your group in 2019 is being ditched for Peter Obi. What's the difference between Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi that's making you to push for a Peter Obi potential presidency?
Thank you very much. There is a whole lot of difference. A lot has happened between 2019 and today. In 2019, if you may recall, the same group, the Southern and Middle Belt Forum, endorsed the candidate of the People's Democratic Party then, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. But since then, things have changed. And what has changed? The issues that have cropped up in the country, particularly the way and manner key players between the PDP and the APC, participated, especially the manner in which presidential candidates were thrown up in their conventions, which was characterized by the use of huge money that one cannot explain. Just a few delegates were gathered in the Eagle Square by both parties, and the manner of throwing up those delegates, each delegate representing just one local government, and huge sums of money in dollars were used to bring up those candidates. And it cannot be the way of recruiting leaders that will represent the people in the country. And so the appearance of Peter Obi on the Labour Party, and the way he has gone about in his consultation, bringing issues to the fore, the very issues ranging from security issues, economic issues, social issues, that he discusses, giving hope to Nigeria and Nigerians, has made it unavoidable that the Southern and Middle Belt Forum has no option but to throw their weight behind it, because Nigeria is in dire need of focused leadership, leadership that is empathic, leadership that is human-focused, leadership that is accountable, leadership with integrity. And the Middle Belt and Southern Forum have weighed all the candidates that have been thrown up by the parties. And they have seen that the candidature of Peter Obi actually epitomizes this. And that is why the decision was taken.
To you, Professor Nwekeaku, did you by chance consider other candidates before reaching this very strong decision of deciding to go with Peter Obi? Because there are other Southern presidential candidates. I know there's Peter Umiadi, who's also a professor, and then the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance. And of course, you know that Ifeanyi Okowa is a vice presidential candidate in the People's Democratic Party. And of course, you know that Bola Tinubu is also from the southern part of the country, alongside other candidates. What made you reach this conclusion in your organization, which is a well-respected organization across the country, that the individual in question, Peter Obi, is the best for an endorsement by your group?
Thank you so much. Well, it was a long process. before arriving at endorsing His Excellency Mr. P2B, you remember that earlier this year, earlier this year, that very forum, the Southern and Middle Belt Forum, came up with a resolution that power should shift, not just to the south, but to the southeast, for the sake of equity, justice, and fairness. That was one. And so they analyzed, we have 6 geographical zones in Nigeria, and the forum analyzed the thing that South and Northeast has ruled Nigeria for 6 years, North Central 18 years. By the time the President General Buhari completes his tenure, Northwest would have ruled Nigeria for 22 years. Now you come to the South. Southwest has ruled Nigeria for 12 years, South 6 years, Southeast just 6 months. That was one. And then the forum equally look at the legal aspect. We looked at the Constitution. We found out that Section 14, subsection 3 provides that the government of the Federation and its agencies, in whatever they do, should reflect the federal character of Nigeria in order to give every section a sense of belonging. So looking at that, the case of that constitutional matter, you see equally some of the parties, including PDP, has zoning arrangement. You find out, so after due analysis, we found out that it is actually the turn of the Southeast. That was first. And that was why the forum came out earlier and said all the political parties should zone their presidency to the Southeast for the sake of peace. The forum equally remembered that in the past, such considerations were done. For example, 1999, because of the cancellation of the 1993 presidential election, believed to have been won by Chief MKO Abiola, which was annulled, the federal government, Nigerians decided to zone the presidency, the 2 major parties then, to the Southwest. And that was why Olusegun Obasanjo and Olufaye contested. Of course, Olufale, because an Igbo son, His Excellency, Dr. Alex Ekwueme, Vice President of the Second Republic, was set to pick that ticket. But because of that consideration, at the same time, His Excellency, Dr. Bonion, was set to pick that of NPC. In fact, he picked it. He had to step down. He had to step down for Olufale. And so that was a compensation. I can keep on giving examples. And so the forum, after doing due analysis, said, look, if we want this federation to continue, if we want unity of this country, it is important to allow Southeast to produce the president. That was first. Second, the forum equally analyzed the issues in the country. In Nigeria today, Nigeria is so divided than ever before. Inflation has reached high heaven. Nothing seems to be working. We produce oil. Nigeria is the 6th largest producer of crude oil. But today, Nigeria is, you can't have fuel in Nigeria. I bought fuel before coming here, 185 naira per liter. In some places, 200. You don't have fuel, you don't have cooking gas, you don't have kerosene. So we analyze the candidates. We look at their past performance. P2B, as Honorable Jonathan Aseke said, as a governor of Anambra State, when he took over, we analyzed his thing. Education was down. But today, Anambra is #1. Go to GCE, JAM, and this state.
Well,
3 years ago.
Not at the moment. I just want to add.
No.
That
So
yes,
these are the analysis.
3 years.
And so,
after that,
good.
yes, Anambra was going forward in education. But
so
of course,
today,
that is not the situation at the moment because we don't have the latest figures yet.
No. 3 years ago, there was this techno competition where the Regina Passy School in Onitsha, Anambra State, came first, beating Japan, beating USA. They developed they developed that is a machine that can detect any fake product, not just drug. And that credit goes to Peter Obi. And then, just as he said, he left over 75 billion naira, handed over to his successor, apart from the stocks and shares and other things. So we analyzed them. After that, we said, well, if he wins the primary, and now he has won the primary, so we interviewed him. We've also considered other considerations. We said that, well, first is that PDP violated the principle of zoning arrangement. Therefore, the forum said we will not even consider PDP. APC observed that. But our problem is that APC, instead of also reflecting federal character, the presidential candidate is a Muslim, the running mate is a Muslim. And at the same time, the Senate president is a Muslim. Speaker of House of Representatives is a Muslim. And that means the Christians won't have a sense of belonging. So these are some of the considerations the forum took in arriving at that very decision.
So did you consult with that of other political parties? I mean, like ABGA. I mean, ABGA
yes.
is one of the largest political parties in the
yes.
country.
Yes.
The same thing with the Social Democratic Party. And of course, those are Christians who are the presidential candidate and all of that.
Yes.
Did you restrict your search for someone to endorse to only APC, PDP, and Labour Party? Or you took consideration of all these other political parties? I just
yes.
want us to set that
Thank
straight.
you. Thank you.
Because these are Nigerians,
yeah.
they are formidable people
yes,
who
yes.
want to contest for the presidency,
yes.
and they are candidates in those political parties too.
Yes. In the first place, the Southern and Middle Belt Forum set up a committee called Working Committee. And that committee has 4 members from Ohaneze, 4 members from Afenifere, 4 members from Middle Belt Forum, and 4 members from Pandef, 16, plus a chairman. And then ask the committee to go and assess the candidates and equally look at other things affecting the country. And the committee met and analyzed the candidates and discussed with them and came up with a recommendation. And so the committee made a recommendation to the House. So the House didn't just got up and then adopted. There was a committee set for that, and I'm still a member of that committee.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting development indeed.
Yes.
In the
There's
polity.
a committee set up.
And I come to you, Jonathan Asake. Let's talk about the issue of restructuring, which is what Pa Adebanjo says is making the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum to warm up to Peter Obi. What are the sort of commitments that you're hearing from this gentleman on the issues of restructuring? And when we say restructuring, what sort of restructuring is the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum looking at in a potential Peter Obi presidency?
Well, the Peter Obi that the Southern and Middle Belt Forum saw or have seen is a man who we can look back to his pedigree, his political antecedents. Like Professor has said, his tenure as governor of Anambra State, the man proved by all standards that he is a leader that is accountable to the people. He is a leader that sees the future, not consuming everything in the present. The amount of money he left within the coffers of the Anambra State government as internally generated revenue speaks for itself. So those are some of the things that were observed by the forum. And like it has been said, you know, the restructuring that is expected, restructuring, you know, different people talk about restructuring in different ways. Even the candidates of the other parties, after assessment, have spoken about restructuring. But the perception of restructuring by the different candidates is different. And so the restructuring by Dr. Peter Obi is the one that tallies with the perception of the Southern and Middle Belt Forum. Number one, when we talk about fiscal policy, for instance, issues like, revenue at the center, where states only go to the center in Abuja after every month end to collect revenue, and there is no any effort by state governments, or most of these state governments, to generate internally generated revenue. And even where internally generated revenue,
All right, we seem to have had the usual issue here. I mean, we've had some lighting issues due to power issues, of course, which we're all familiar with here in Nigeria. And I come back to you, Prof. Tell me about some of these sound bites we are hearing about restructuring. I mean, you want restructuring. What is Peter Obi committing himself to? Because so that we don't have issues like it happened with the All Progressives Congress in 2014, 2015. They all promised Nigerians we're going to have restructuring with a lot of issues embedded in it. Like, for example, fiscal federalism, the issues of state police is there. And then, of course, the issues of, devolving powers from the federal government to the states. What exactly are you putting together in terms of restructuring? Because there's a talk of new constitution. Pa Adebanjo wants Nigeria to go back to 1964 constitution. What are some of those things that you've been able to extract as commitment from your preferred candidate in this instance, Peter Obi, though he's not a doctor, like Asake has said? I must correct that.
Well, when Chief Adebanjo advocated for, that is going back to 1964, that is adopting the Republican Constitution, because that Constitution was made by Nigerians. The rest were imposed on Nigeria by the military.
Are you saying that the 1979 Constitution, for example, was imposed by Nigerians?
Yes. Wait.
We had... okay.
The 1979 Constitution was drafted by one man. After that, he just presented it. And so,
1979 Constitution, which the 1999 Constitution is an offshoot of it, because the late Chief F.R.A. Williams was the head of that Constituent Assembly that produced the 1979 Constitution. And of course, you and I will know that there was a Constituent Assembly that produced that 1979 Constitution. And of course, if we had leaders, including the late Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, taking part in the formation of that 1979 Constitution, which led to the evolution of the Second Republic, then shouldn't we say that it's a people's constitution?
Well, if you have read both 1979 and the 1999 Constitution, you see that fundamentally there's no difference.
Yeah, just a few differences.
1999 Constitution was a full importation of 1979. Just very few things. So the Constitution, as of the people who actually were members of the Constituent Assembly, how were they selected? Were they selected by the people? No. The military handpicked those they wanted, so they were not representative of the people. And the military, even when they did that, the military doctored that Constitution to suit of course, their convenience. So that constitution is not Nigerian constitution. And you can see, let me give you an example. By that 1963, we had 3 regions. The Western region, the Eastern region, and Northern region. By 1964, we had Midwestern region. Now, that means if there were something to be shared then, it would be shared into 4. Okay? Northern region will have 1, Southern region 1, Western region 1, Midwestern 1. Today, we have 19 states. And Northern region, old Northern region has 19 states. And that means the entire 3 regions, Eastern region, Midwestern region, and Western region, has 17 states. That is 1. 2, you now go to Senate. Remember, each state has 3 senators. 19 times 3, that means North has 57 senators. Now, you come to why the South has 51. You see, Go to House of Representatives, the same thing. Go to local government, the same thing. For example, I want to give you an example. You know, Lagos has highest population. Lagos has to date how many local governments? I think 21.
Well, 20 local governments. That's
good.
what the 1999
Very
Constitution
good.
says.
Kano now has 44 local governments. Jigawa was covered from Kano. Jigawa has 33 plus 44, 77 against Lagos. Is there any justice there? So you go to, and then when you come for representation, people from these areas will come and take decision. How will it affect the...
But of course, Lagos tried to add more
yes.
local council development
They tried under Tinubu,
yeah,
but they didn't follow the process. They didn't allow the local government to be gazetted by the National Assembly. And so, well, that is it. But what we are saying is that Lagos, other parts of Nigeria, were not equally treated. If you go to Bayelsa, Bayelsa has just 8 local governments. So if you are sharing revenue, Kano will get 44 times whatever the thing. And then Bayelsa, an oil producing state, will get just 8.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it by population? I mean, the local government formation is based on population.
No. See.
Landmass and all of that.
Good. Landmass is only in Nigeria that you budget resources to empty place. You leave your population. Instead of training your population, instead for human capacity, we don't pay attention there. You allocate money to empty lands.
Well,
okay, that is Nigeria. And that's why
when you say empty land, I just want to probe that. When
yes.
you say allocating money to empty lands, what are you saying in this instance? Is it that some of the northern states do not have enough population, or some of the local governments do not have enough population to deserve, being given funds? Or what exactly are you aiming at?
It's not only northern states. You can find it in some other places, because military didn't do diligent work.
Before the formation
yes,
of local government.
That's the thing. They didn't do diligent work. It's not just, if you go to the north, there are some areas that we also put in a difficult position. Okay? So it depends on who and who were in charge then. If you were a member of Armed Forces Ruling Council and this thing. So that is the thing. And so anything you are doing based on that contraption called Constitution, you will not be fair to all parts of the Nigeria. That's why Adebanjo and the entire Afenifere said, look, they don't want this constitution because this constitution is not constitution of the people.
So you want us to go back to regionalism? Is that what the Southern Middle Belt Leaders Forum doesn't? And is that what Peter Obi is saying that he will take Nigeria to?
We are saying, for example, if you come to Nigerian constitution, 68 items are under the exclusive list. And that makes Nigerian federal government the strongest throughout the world. Federalism is supposed to be coordinated. You understand? But Nigerian federalism is unitary. Nigerian federalism is unitary in the sense that all the things are concentrated at the center. You don't give room to component units. And that's why Odebasake talked of every month our governors will come and share what we have. No person talks about production because some areas have seen that advantage. They don't need to work and they'll be raising resources. But P2B said, we've told P2B, look, the center is too heavy. There is no way federal government should have more than 15 items.
All right.
The rest should go to the state, including police. Police should go to the state.
Okay.
And the number of things.
I will just have
so the center has to be decongest. We'll talk about devolution of power.
Yeah,
Allow the
I will just ask you to hold on now because we have to go on this short break. Sorry for interrupting you. When we come back, we'll allow you to say more on this. And of course, we'll be having Noble Jonathan Asake joining us. You're still watching the Arise interview. And of course, we'll now go on a short break. And when we come back, the conversation continues on what the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum are saying about restructuring and, of course, the endorsement of Peter Obi, one of the presidential candidates. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the conversations. I'm Somno Sambo. Now, the conversation continues with my guest, Professor Charles Nwekiaku, who is the secretary of the Igbo Elders Consultative Forum. And Joining me from Kaduna Live is the Labour Party governorship candidate, Jonathan Asake, who is a former member of the House of Representatives and also the immediate former president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, who are all part of the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum, who met sometime last week with Peter Obi, and of course during the week, during this outgoing week with Peter Obi, and of course reached a consensus that they should support his candidacy in the 2023 presidential election. And we're probing this decision in the midst of a multitude of Southern candidates in the 2023 polls. And I come back to you, Honorable Asake. Let's talk about this issue of restructuring. And you know how the North has always been very careful in looking at these issues, because some of the Northern leaders think that it's a decoy for some Southern leaders to push a certain agenda into the polity without taking a critical look at issues. I mean, for example, he mentioned the issue of Kano having 44 local governments and of course Lagos still having 20, but they will tell you that Kano is larger than Lagos in terms of landmass. And of course, yes, the population controversy has always been there. That's why since 2006, it's been difficult for us to have a national population census, though this government says it's going to do that. But I just want to also correct an error that was made earlier. There are 27 local governments in Jigawa State, which was carved out of Kano State. Now, when you push this agenda of restructuring and put it side by side with Peter Obi, don't you think that may affect his fortunes in the North, considering how the North has always been careful about this issue of restructuring because of the likes of Southern leaders like Adebanjo, who keep pushing this agenda of going back to the 1964 Constitution?
Well, I don't think so. It's not only in the South that the issue of restructuring vis-a-vis the number of local governments that have been cited, that is a problem. Even in the North, let me just give you an example. Kaduna State was together with Katsina State, and in 1987 the state was divided into Katsina and Kaduna, and at that time Katsina State had 7 local governments, while Kaduna State had 7 local governments. But Kaduna State had by far a landmass and population more than Katsina State. In fact, Kaduna's landmass is about 46,000 square kilometers. But as of today, Katsina State has 34 local government, and Kaduna has only 23. So, no logic to explain for that, because Kaduna obviously has a higher population and a higher landmass and everything that it takes for a state to exist. So, what can we explain for that, if not because of what we're talking about, the restructuring? So it's not only in the South that we're talking about the restructuring, but also in the North. And that difference of 11 local governments is because, like I said earlier, that every month end, all the states needs to do is to run to the center in Abuja and collect revenue from there that nobody knows, they don't know even where it is coming from. And so to just go and spend it the way they want, and more so that the local government system also has its own problems. But if states will create local governments and take care of those local governments for their survival without depending on the center, states will become more responsible. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect is the state police. For instance, the insecurity in my own state of Kaduna is one of the worst in the whole country. And I have heard my governor complain, and many other governors that are faced with these challenges of insecurity, that because the police and other security agencies are not under their direct control, so they have had problem curbing these issues of insecurity and the challenges that are there. So if you look at it, it is actually an issue that will be of interest to both northern and southern states, not only for the north, not only for the south, if we're talking about restructuring. And after all, in the nations today, the best practices around the world, if states are created And the whole thing is concentrated at the center, where you look at our legislative list, the exclusive legislative list, several items that ought not to be there. It should be in the concurrent legislative list. In fact, states need to have their own security arrangement, and states need to generate their own power, and so on and so forth. So if you look at it, it is actually an index for development of the country. And most of the states, there is virtually no state that does not have what it takes to survive on its own. But it has, the collection of revenue at the center has made every state to be lazy. No creativity, no ideas, only to go and collect money from the center, which comes from this oil. And this oil may not last forever.
All right. Now, aren't you afraid that Peter Obi's candidacy may be seen from the prism of the southeast in the north? Because some people are beginning to say, look, Peter Obi is pandering more as a southeastern candidate, not as a Nigerian candidate. While some people are also saying that, look, those from the north needs to understand Peter Obi very well. When the campaign season begins, how prepared is the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum, including your party, the Labour Party, to sell Peter Obi as a pan-Nigerian presidential candidate and not someone who should be seen from the prism of the southeast alone?
So when people argue in this manner about a candidate from the southeast, the fear of other zones, particularly from the north, it is laughable. The logic is so warped. I mean, we have had presidents coming from other regions of the country, from the northeast, northwest, north central, southwest, and even south-south. Why is it that we don't talk about that only when it comes to talking about a candidate from the southeast? That is what you will never find an explanation. So if this country is to move forward, it is not about where one comes from. It is about what the person who throws up himself for leadership, his or herself for leadership, what he can do. And so far, Peter Obi has been able to prove beyond reasonable doubt, even in his own consultations, that he understands the problems of this country. He understands the economy very well. He understands what he can do with regard to security. He understands more about education. So when you have a leader, not only because of the zone he comes from, no, but also the stuff he is made up of. I mean, you cannot compare Peter Obi to others who have always paraded themselves and talk about the region they come from. Peter Obi is a pan-Nigerian. He doesn't talk about the region he comes from. He doesn't talk about who he is. He talks about what he can do for Nigeria. And that is the kind of leader we want. But if he happens to come from the southeast, good and fine. If we have a leader again like that, who throws up himself and comes from any other region next time, we'll go for him. And that is why the Middle Belt and the Southern Forum throws his weight behind him. And you ask whether the group, the socio-cultural group, will campaign. You have already seen how from the north to the south, from east to west, Nigerians of all walks of life, irrespective of their religious background, irrespective of their cultural or ethnic background, irrespective of their region, they are coming together and they are saying one thing: we are tired. We are tired. We are looking for leadership. Leadership that has humanity at the center. Leadership that will look at Nigerians as the same. Not leadership that will look at Nigerians from the prism of ethnicity or region or religion. So it is a simple arithmetic.
And I come back to you, Professor Nweke. What do you say to those politicians? I mean, those well-grounded politicians in APC and PDP who just dismiss Peter Obi as a social media sensation, and of course that he keeps reeling out fake statistics, and that he doesn't have experience in running a federal government or having been in a position of working in the federal government, apart from just being chairman of the Security and Exchange Commission, which is just a temporary job. What do you say to those kind of people who just dismiss him as someone who shouldn't be taken seriously by the regular politicians who have been in the system for years?
Well, those people may have spoken out of ignorance. They do not know the man called Peter Obi, a former governor. From our investigation, we found out that Mr. Peter Obi, as a former governor, has no plot of land in Anambra State. I don't know of any other former governor that doesn't have land in his place. We found out that Peter Obi doesn't enjoy gratuity, no pension.
But when you say, sorry to just interject, if you say he has no land in
given by
Anambra State,
given by
I
government.
know his residence is based in Onitsha.
No. Given by government.
Okay.
No
So
land allocation by government to Peter Obi. This is our private investigation, and I want to be proved wrong. I know people are listening to us. We found out that Peter Obi has no official land plot allocated to him by Anambra State government. We found out that no pension, no gratuity. We know some former governors who are earning up to 300 million from their state. They are at the Senate. They are earning at the Senate. They are still earning at their state. Peter Obi. We also, part of restructuring we are talking of is to reduce the cost of governance. You see where politics has become the most thriving industry in Nigeria today, where chief executive has so many special this, special this, special this, special that, sometimes up to 100, one person. Peter Obi is not going to do that. He's going to cut the cost of governance.
Yeah, I mean, I must state it clearly here that we can't start. This is not yet campaign season.
We are not campaigning for him.
That this is what he's going to do. Yeah, the issue of cost of governance is very high, and that's part of the reasons why you're considering him. Yes. What do we do as a nation? About these issues, because we must be very clear not
because
to campaign,
talking about
because the campaign season
other
is
politicians.
Not yet here.
These other politicians that have dismissed Peter Obi, saying that he quotes wrong figures, these are the people who are sharing money, their trust in the power of their deep pockets. But you can see, in Kano, a Kano man, a Fulani donated the property for the campaign of Peter Obi. Go to Lagos, go to other parts of the country, non-Igbos. So Peter Obi is a national phenomenon. People who are progressive, progressive-minded Nigerians, irrespective of their ethnic or religious background, they want a change, and they are rooting for Peter Obi. So those politicians who are hoping, trusting in their deep pocket and the state machinery, they will meet their Waterloo because Nigerians are tired. Okay. In 2019, we voted like this. This is where we are today. You can't have anything.
But Prof, I just want us to be, to be cautious here, because these are the same sort of soundbites we had in 2015 when President Muhammadu Buhari was coming. And I mean, the APC sold him to Nigerians to be like a messiah. Aren't you projecting Peter Obi to be like a messiah? Aren't you giving him more troubles than he can handle?
Yes. When Buhari came, some parts of Nigerians were hailing him. We in the Southeast, we are not, because we are business oriented. We've examined him. We were not convinced that he would do well in business. And that's why our people never came together to take a meeting that they would not vote for Buhari. But they found out, comparing him with the other, that they needed somebody that is business oriented. And that's why they voted for Atiku in 2019. Because Atiku has managed a business. Buhari, we don't know of any. He may have managed. So it's the same principle that led the Southern and Middle Belt Forum. We looked around, yes, people are saying that he hasn't been opportune to run a federal government. But if you know Anambra State is a sophisticated state. Any person who can make it in Anambra State can rule Nigeria. So Peter Obi has done it in Anambra State, and he did it well. These people who are talking, dismissing him, no problem. It's good for them to keep on dismissing him. They will meet their Waterloo because the man is going to switch
politically. All right, and Asake, you have been in the House of Representatives as someone representing your constituency at the Federal Parliament. You know what it means like for someone to be in government and not be in control of the National Assembly. I don't see your party, the Labour Party, focusing more on seats, winning seats at the National Assembly. Now, if by chance Peter Obi does get elected, don't you think an APC or a PDP-dominated National Assembly will make nonsense of all his plans?
Well, those are the deceptions that we live with. And that is why we don't go for good leaders, because we are under that deception that the leader goes without the National Assembly or State Assembly, as the case may be. But let me tell you, when we have a good leader in place, a leader who knows what he is doing, who is visionary, who is focused, and means well for the nation, that leader will enjoy the support of the Assembly. After all, the Labour Party has presented candidates at both national and state assemblies. And I can assure you that surprises will come when this election will take place. Surprises will come. A lot of those members of the legislative and at the state and the national level will be torpedoed. They are not expecting this, because there is a wave of change that actually is blowing. And Nigerians, like I said earlier, are tired. They are looking for this change that will come, a genuine change, and that they are looking for leadership that is people-centered, leadership that is compassionate, leadership that is empathic with the people, leadership that understands the pains of the people. And they are seeing this thing in the way Peter Obi is leading the Labour Party. So I can assure you that most of the seats of the National and State Assembly will be taken over by the Labour Party.
I'm putting these questions to you because, I mean, even in your state, Kaduna State, some people are dismissive of your own gubernatorial ambition, and even that of Yusuf Dati Ahmed, the vice presidential candidate of Peter Obi, and they say both of you are political lightweights in Kaduna State. What can you do? I mean, you are just a group of noisemakers. Tell us convincingly how you would be able, within the umbrella of a Peter Obi campaign, when the campaign season starts, sell the Labour Party to the electorate within your jurisdiction as one that's different from the APC and PDP. Because some people in PDP are saying that Peter Obi used to be in PDP, Yusuf used to be in PDP, so in one way or the other, this is just an offshoot of people who are disgruntled about what's happening in the PDP.
Well, like I said, people can always dismiss leadership that is coming in a revolutionary manner like that. Even in America, you know, when Trump was coming, a lot of Americans were saying he's a joker. He became president. Mr. Williams Ruto, who just won the elections in Kenya, you know, they dismissed him. A lot of Kenyans dismissed him as a social media, you know, candidate. And the same goes with Peter Obi and some of us, but it is not true. The truth about it is that what does it take when people are talking about structures? What does it take to have structures? Structures is when people have gotten their PVCs and are ready to vote. And there is an unusual drive that we have never had since 1999, that Nigerians of all walks of life have gone in to register and acquire their PVCs. And it has never happened. And it is because they want to vote in the Peter Obi and the Labour Party into power. That is the reason. And so that is enough structure that the Labour Party has to win the incoming election in 2023. There is no further proof than that. And thank God, I can ascribe this to the present President Muhammadu Buhari, the new electoral act that provides for electronic transmission of votes. So all those leakages, all those settling of security and INEC and whatever is no longer going to be there. When votes are cast there at the polling unit, they are transmitted directly to a central server. This is an improvement, and I truly salute President Muhammadu Buhari and the present administration for scoring that, because if that is the only thing that they have done for Nigerians, for us to have a credible elections in 2023 and come up with leaders that will take this country to a higher height and to join the Committee of Nations, I think we have to give it to them.
All right, Honorable Jonathan Asake is a former member of the House of Representatives and, of course, the immediate past president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, and, of course, he is the Labour Party governorship candidate in Kaduna State. We must thank you immensely for joining us to help us understand these issues of the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum endorsement of Peter Obi, and of course what it means in the days and weeks and of course months ahead when the campaigns begin. And of course we must thank Professor Charles Nwekiaku, who is the secretary of the Igbo Elders Consultative Forum, and of course this group is also part of the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum that's led by Sir Edwin Clark, Chief Edwin Clark, as he likes to be called, and of course, Pa Ayo Adebanjo. These two great Nigerians who have been pursuing this agenda, and of course, restructuring a new constitution is at the heart of the demands of the SMA-BLF. We must thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and we hope to have you some other time.